Welcome to the Lentil Intervention Podcast, raising awareness and inspiring action for personal and planetary health, with your hosts, Ben and Emma.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 35. My name is Ben Adelberg.
And I'm Emma Strutt.
And you should know the drill by now. Head over to our website, sign up to our newsletter, which I can say now will start to become more regular than irregular. That is a promise. And buy us a few coffees while you're there as well. And don't forget to subscribe to this podcast as well. Now, Emma, there seems to be a little bit of a trend. Every time we do a conservation type conversation, how's that for a tongue twister? And me coming from South Africa, it really, really emotionally winds me up, and I can't see this one being any different. So let's get this show on the road.
All right. So today we are joined by Andre Borell, a successful entrepreneur and the director and producer of the new documentary Envoy, Shark Cull. This is a really important documentary that's shedding light on the real story behind the shark safety programs in Queensland and New South Wales. This has truly been a labour of love for Andre. He's worn a lot of different hats and worked endless hours on this production. So it's wonderful to see it finally being launched into the world because it is such an important film. So anyone who goes to the beach, anyone who cares about the environment, especially those who live in Queensland and New South Wales, really need to watch this. So I'm very much looking forward to this chat today. Andre, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. And Ben, I apologise in advance. It probably is going to wind you up. It's quite crazy what's happening off our beaches that most people don't know about. So apologies in advance.
Oh, it already has. I've watched the docker. So job done. Thank you very much. Now, Andre, firstly, like we like to do with all our guests, let's learn a little bit about yourself, your background. We were chatting offline. You spend a bit of time in Singapore at the moment. But yeah, tell us about your life in a
nutshell. Sure. Okay. So, look, born and bred Brisbane boy. So didn't actually grow up on the beach, but we're an hour away from both the Sunshine Coast and the Gold Coast. So spent a lot of time at both those locations as a kid. Always loved the ocean, liked waves, liked animals, all those sorts of things. Didn't really end up having a really profound connection with the ocean until much later in my 20s when I did my scuba certification. And that really changed a lot of things for me. You're seeing that whole other world that exists down there. Is literally, could be out of a sci-fi movie, and wouldn't look out of place. It's an amazing place down there, and that really changed things for me. And I started watching more ocean-related documentaries and consuming more content and reading stuff around it because I'd been down there and experienced it. And then my life sort of started going in quite a different direction that sort of, ended up in kind of accidentally making a documentary. So, all through since graduating high school, I've kind of been a business guy, I guess, until now. I've started businesses generally when I see a problem or a need in a market, and I think it can fill it with a solution. I've started businesses, and some have gone very, very well. Been fortunate enough to have a relatively, good but so far short business career. This whole love of the ocean's kind of taken that off the rails a little bit, and I'm now going through this process of kind of trying to have less businesses and less commitments so that I can do more in this space. So I guess that's a shortish version.
Yeah, that's perfect. So before we dive into the important messages in the film, maybe let's just set the scene a little bit. I think anyone who's grown up in, that post-Jaws era can probably appreciate that sharks have been portrayed as these evil, sinister, man-eating killers. Like sharks, most sharks are predators, yes, but the whole image that's portrayed, that's not the reality. They're a really important part of our ecosystem. And a lot of them, especially in Australian waters, they're in trouble. We've got some critically endangered species here. So talk to us about the importance of sharks for ocean ecosystems and why we need to start flipping this narrative and start really caring about them.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I think first of all, I watched Jaws as a kid growing up, and for some reason it didn't make me fearful. I think even younger, I sort of intuitively saw it for what it was, which is entertainment and not a documentary. So I never had that that fear from the media portrayal of sharks or Hollywoods. I always found it a bit comical. And then spending time with them underwater just really, really reinforces that. Like, they're even a step more smart and cautious and chilled than even I thought they were. So that part, they're wildly misunderstood. And if I could take everyone in the world underwater for half an hour and spend some time with a shark, I would, because that's the best. The second best thing I could think of was this documentary. So look, in terms of sharks in general, their importance to the ocean ecosystem is that the best way I've heard them described by Paul de Gelder in our film, who's survived a shark bite, a very serious shark bite, is the doctors of the reef, or the doctors of the ocean, if you like. So they swim around and they will predate on predominantly things that are sick, slow, old, diseased, and they keep the whole ocean in check. Stops disease from spreading, stops certain species from taking over an area and wiping out all sorts of other species. If you take sharks out of an ecosystem, be it on a micro level at a particular reef or a macro level from the oceans, if you take sharks out, things go very, very bad very, very quickly. It's a phenomenon called trophic collapse, where the whole trophic web or the food web collapses. And when that collapses, like even down to coral dies. Everything from fish, living, breathing things, sure. But then, coral is living and breathing, but things that the parts of the ocean that people don't traditionally see as a living, breathing animal, such as coral, even they die. Like, everything dies if sharks die. So that is their importance, and I don't think there's two problems. A, people don't understand that. They just think sharks are swimming around and eating people or their fish that they'd rather catch, number one. And number two, so they're an inconvenience. Everyone loves wildlife until it's an inconvenience. And then number two is they don't realize the repercussions of taking that kind of, keystone species out of an ecosystem, and it's not good.
So everyone knows of the great white. You talk about coral reefs, the reef shark, coming from Durban, the Zambezi. But how many species are there actually? Let's talk about, say the east coast of Australia in particular. How many species are there, and how many of those are actually endangered?
Okay, so it's a big question. I'll try and give the simplest answer as possible. Around the world, there's over 440 species of shark. In Australia, there is 180-ish of those in our waters, and a good chunk of them are endemic to Australian waters, so they exist nowhere else in the world. So that's kind of the amount. In terms of the east coast of Australia, I actually don't know the exact number, but I would think it's probably around 100 species would exist on the east coast of Australia, I guess. Now, really only 3 of them are any risk to people in terms of, not that they're swimming around looking for human blood, but if they do confuse you for a prey item and they bite you, they are the size of animal that can do damage. And that's the bull shark, the tiger shark, and the white shark. Now, the white shark is a protected species federally, and it is also on the IUCN Red List. And they are one of the target species, as are tigers and as are bulls. They are one of the target species of these shark culling programs. And we can get into the mechanics of shark nets and drumlines and how these sharks are targeted and killed in an attempt to keep beaches safe. But yeah, these programs, and it's a legal quirk, are legally allowed to target endangered species that are protected by the EPBC Act, the Environmental Protection Biodiversity Conservation Act. Federally protected species, but these programs are allowed to kill them. And yeah, we're talking IUCN Red List. We actually did just an Instagram post recently about the Queensland Target List, which is 19 species of shark. Keep in mind, I just said there's only 3 that are of any concern. The target list in Queensland, target list meaning if they're caught, they will be killed, is 19 sharks. And of that, the post we did was actually showing the level of endangered rating according to the IUCN Red List of every species on the target list. And yeah, it's pretty concerning. There's critically endangered animals on there. Like the great hammerhead is listed as critically endangered, and it is on the Queensland target list, having not been responsible for a single fatality ever anywhere in the world in the 440 years of records that exist. So this is a little introduction as to the absurdity of these programs. But yeah, you've got a shark that's critically endangered on the IUCN Red List, is not protected in Australian waters, weirdly. The level of how endangered it is not always connected to protection status. They don't always go hand in hand. So critically endangered, not protected, and never killed a person, but is essentially on the kill list for these programs. So yeah, that's just one example. It's I'm sure we're going to get into it more.
Yeah. So let's talk about the current shark control methods then in Queensland and New South Wales. I mean, there's been a lot of debate over the years as to whether the drum lines and the nets are effective at doing what the government, tells us what they actually do. Mm-hmm. As a Queenslander, I think I noticed the argument kicks up a notch every whale season, because there's every single year there's always at least one whale that gets tangled up in the nets, but there's so many other marine species that get affected by these methods, obviously. But in regards to the sharks and shark attacks on humans, you've just outlined that, it's not the best way to be going about things, but is it even effective at reducing attacks?
Short answer is no, and we only found that out through the filmmaking process and through the research and through speaking to experts. What we thought we were going to be doing was analysing the ethics of a program that kills a whole bunch of wildlife to keep people safe. And is that ethical? And, where's the line? Once we got into it and we look at the program, we look at the data and we look at the science, that's not even the argument here. It doesn't keep people safe. We did statistical analysis on, does drumline or net placement at a beach reduce the likelihood of shark incident occurring there? Being a bump or a bite or anything like that? And the answer is no. The correlation between nets and drumlines and any reduced incident does not exist. The government pretend it works because what they do is they ignore that stat that I just told you, and they say, yes, but there's less fatal bites at protected beaches. So they use that to protect their program. What they're neglecting to mention is every beach with a net or some drum lines also has a lifeguard tower. So of course, beaches with nets and drum lines and lifeguards there and first responders are going to have less fatal incidents because there's a quick response time.
Yeah,
but
and
you actually
close to hospitals too.
Exactly right, close to hospitals. So yes, of course, the fatality rate is going to be slower there than some remote rural beach that has no nets, no drum lines, and no lifeguards. But yeah, if you look at the true intent of the program, which is stop people getting bitten by a shark, and you look at the efficacy of that, it doesn't work. It's not effective, full stop. And they've more or less started acknowledging that, or at least stopped denying it. So they now are getting clever with their messaging. So rather than saying it works, they're starting to brag about how many sharks they caught. Not even saying it works, just implying it works by saying, here's how many sharks we killed. Yeah, woo, go us. Or, there's all sorts of clever messaging they like to use. But if you boil it down to the fact, are you less likely to get bitten by a shark or have an interaction with a shark at a beach with a net or drumline? The answer is no.
But, okay, I'm wound up, and there's a lot. There's a lot of places we can go from here. But first, for the benefit of our listeners, can you explain because I actually didn't realize the extent to what it actually meant. But can you define what a baited drumline actually is? So we know what shark nets are to some degree, but also there's actually some interesting facts around that people will be surprised. But yeah, can you explain those two form of control methods in inverted commas?
Absolutely. I think that might have actually been where Emma was going with her question, but I went on a little tangent. So yeah, absolutely. A shark net is not a barrier. It's not an enclosure. It does not keep sharks away from people. Full stop, period. The government don't pretend it is. There's a public misconception that that's what they are, and the government don't do a lot to dispel that misconception, but they are not that. We are talking 150 meters long of net, 6 meters deep of net, sitting in 12 meters depth of water, so they only go about halfway down or up. New South Wales nets are set on the bottom, Queensland are set on the top, just as a little quirk. So regardless, either way, they only cover half the water column, and they're only about 150 to 180, depending which nets you're talking about, long. Now, this is used to cover to protect, in inverted commas, kilometres and kilometres and kilometres of beach. So the misconception that they keep sharks away somehow is a problem. They're not keeping sharks away from you. They are comically small. They are only there to capture, entangle, and kill sharks. That's their intent. They're a fishing net. It's that simple. So that is what a net is. So yeah, I think people have more of an understanding of what a net is compared to a drumline, but usually it's a misconception. So that's that one clarified. A drumline, that's 500 meters from shore, by the way. Now, a drumline is a baited large shark fishing hook hanging from a bright yellow buoy hanging in the water, essentially chumming the water, hoping a shark will swim by, sniff it, come over for a look, and get hooked on the drumline. Now, there's two types of drumlines. A traditional drumline, its intent is to kill, so it will catch the shark will either die on the hook, or the contractor will come along, find a shark still alive, and if it's one of those 19 target species I mentioned in Queensland, it will get either shot or stabbed in the head. There are now these new smart drumlines, or sometimes they're called catch alert drumlines, where basically when the hook is pulled due to catch, it sends an alert to the contractor. They can come out and they can tag and release the animal. But they are literally only a week ago, the very, very, very first trial of these started in Queensland, and only in a very small area, whereas they've been used very, very successfully in other regions for quite some time. New South Wales has used them for quite some time. They still have nets to kill sharks, but their drum lines are smart drum lines, so they'll release their sharks. So yeah, basically, just to I guess go full circle here, the methods of killing sharks to reduce their population and try and make the beach safer is either a gill net, a fishing net that is set 500 meters from beach, does not keep sharks away, it's just there to entangle and kill them. We can go into all the other things that entangles and kills as a separate subject, and drum lines, which is just a fancy name for a big shark fishing hook hanging in the water off a buoy, and it is baited, so it's literally designed to attract sharks. Now the problem you have, and again, this is slightly going to a tangent, but I just want to flag it here. The problem you have with both these methods is they're an attractant. So a net, as soon as it's entangled something, a net is not baited, but as soon as it's entangled something, it is then baited. So that's luring large predators closer to the net to have a look, and then closer to shore to have a look as well. A drum line is, by design, baited. So again, you're luring these large predators in, and again, a drum line is just a hook, and there might be 3 of them, 4 of them, 5 of them, 10 of them, whatever the number. These little hooks floating in the sea there, but they're no barrier. So the shark gets a whiff, comes in for a look, and they quite often swim right past them and go, what else is looking around? So yeah, interesting program.
This is like having a farm. You've got sheep on the farm. You don't have a fence to protect the sheep from predators, but you've put a few snares with bait around the property to catch the predator. And it's not really protecting the sheep. All you're doing is you're purposely trying to catch the predator to kill them. And that's what this is almost in a sense. I mean, if you really wanted to protect the beach, you'd go from you'd enclose a whole bay,
Correct.
with nets.
That's a perfect analogy. That's a perfect analogy. I've not actually heard that before. That's a really good way to put it for drum lines. And I do have a good analogy for a net. And the net would be, an analogy for a net would be trying to protect that paddock with a table tennis net.
You've got some imagery or some content on your website, and I'm looking at the one for Burleigh Beach, because Burleigh is actually my favorite beach. When I've spent time in Brizzy and go to the beach, love Burleigh, good surf, etc. And you're showing there the extent of, okay, there's the whole coastline, 2 nets. And what are you saying, 120 meters long?
The Queensland ones are 180.
180. Okay, so two lots of 180 and 4 drum lines. And I know, looking at that visual that you've got here, because I think it goes up to, that's at least 5-6 Ks of coastline I'm looking at.
And to zoom out a bit more too, to use the Gold Coast as an example, all of the Gold Coast, which is 30 kilometres, so from Coolangatta all the way up to Southport, the Southport Spit there is about 30 kilometres. They have 11 nets at 180 metres each, which we'll just do some rounding and call it 2 kilometres. So comically, and if it, even describing this, like, you know, wherever you're listening to this from, you'll be trying to picture that in your head, and I guarantee you, what you're picturing is not doing justice to how small and comical these things are. Until you're out on a boat and you're bobbing there next to one of these tiny nets, and you're looking back towards the coastline, and you're like, what is this doing? This is a joke. And then you can go for a swim, not anymore because it's illegal now, there's an exclusion zone, but you used to be able to go for a swim and go swim under the net. I can't describe how comical it is.
But growing up, this is the other irony. Growing up, I was always told, no, you don't go surfing in non-shark protected nets. You go where the nets are. That's where you surf. It's like
marketing, hey?
But this is what I didn't know. It's like, yeah, I can see the boys holding the nets up. Okay, we're good. But you don't actually realize, like, oh, actually, I'm literally in front of the net, but the sides, like,
and the bottom of the net.
Yeah.
And the bottom of the net, it doesn't even go to the bottom. The only people I find who really, really know how ridiculous these things are is lifeguards, because they use the buoys to, like, either swim out for swim training or paddle out for paddle training. So they regularly go to these and use them as turning points or whatever, or open ocean swimmers. Or there's only a very, very, very small section of the community that actually goes out that 500 meters and goes, what's going on here? This is tiny. This is a joke. So really, they're quite educated. They know. But you're talking a tiny, tiny, tiny portion of the beach-going population actually understand what they are, actually understand that it's not a barrier, it's there to kill stuff, that actually understand how little of the stuff it kills is a dangerous shark. And we can go into the morality of that or not. Like, such a small percentage of the population actually truly understand it. And that's why I felt, when I was, to go back to my business brain of kind of looking at a problem and thinking, how would I solve this and deliver a solution to the market? I saw this when I learned what shark nets were. I was like, this isn't okay. Like, this is a problem, and how would I solve it? And to me, it was about education. Like, if people knew how comically ineffective it is, how destructive it is, I felt like people wouldn't be okay with it. And hence went down the filmmaking path, because I thought that if the general public know what's going on here, it ain't going to be okay. Like, it won't have the social license to continue. So yeah, that's the intent of the film, is first of all inform what these programs are, which should leave most people's jaws on the ground already, because it's not what they thought. And then go into all the other stuff connected to it, of all the bycatch, all the dolphins that die, all the whales that get entangled, all the legalities, how the Queensland program that they're running is not even actually legal, just no one's challenged it yet. Yeah, it goes into a lot, but the core premise is educate, and I don't think people will be okay with it. And so far, that seems to be correct.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so let's dive into some of this then. So we've just talked about how ridiculous these methods are. But you've said essentially they're fishing devices. So talk to us about the bycatch.
Okay. So fishing devices too, they never use that terminology publicly. They say it's, a safety program or whatever. But if you go mess with this equipment, you are fined under a breach of the Fisheries Act. And specifically the clause in the Fisheries Act that says you can't mess with fishing equipment. So for all the public messaging, they might say it's a beach safety program and stuff like that. It's managed by the Fisheries Act. It's managed by the Fisheries Department. If you mess with equipment, you get fined under the Fisheries Act. It's that simple. It's a fishing program. You're quite right. So yeah, designed to catch and kill target sharks, with the misconception that kill a bunch of sharks, the beach should be safer, which, as we've already gone into, is not true, statistically speaking. In terms of bycatch, okay, yeah. Look, you name it, it gets caught in a shark net. We're talking dolphins, we're talking turtles. Again, both of those protected species. Humpback whales, protected species. Rays, so many rays. If you were to go by naming it according to what it catches the most, they would be stingray nets or manta ray nets. Yeah, it's absurd the number of rays they catch. Seabirds. Down in Sydney, seals. Last year, a fur seal drowned and died at Bondi. Yeah, Like you name it, it gets caught in shark nets. Drumlines are slightly, I don't want to say better, slightly more discriminate killers is probably a good way to put it. In terms of their bycatch is lower, but nets are atrocious. Like the Northern New South Wales net trial, so they've never had nets in Northern New South Wales, but after that spate of shark incidents at Ballina, they had a net trial. They abandoned it because the bycatch rate was 97%. 97%. That's a stat we cite in the film. Look, most beaches are slightly better than that, but usually it's still in the 90s. New South Wales performance report, meshing performance report, or whatever they call it, for last meshing season just came out. 89% across all nets in New South Wales, which is 51, 89% bycatch. So yeah, it's really, really bad at catching sharks.
When you say why, that they haven't, this industry hasn't been challenged as such, is it the fear that, they're backed by bigger money that they just stand to lose regardless? If it's backed by I just don't get it. I mean, this whole thing is worse than poaching, because at least in poaching, you're killing, okay, sure, a protected species, but it's still being used for something, rightly or wrongly. It's still being used for something. In this case, it's not even being used as food. It's not being used as anything. It's just literally killing.
The only thing I can identify that this is used as is that the animals are used to protect politicians. That's all. You're quite right. The animal's not consumed. It doesn't actually protect people, as we've already gone into, and the film articulates. The only thing that they are used for is to protect politicians, so that if something happens at a beach, and bites do regularly occur at netted beaches and drumline beaches, but at least the politician can say, well, we had equipment in the water, these things happen. That's literally all it's used for. It's for political cover. That's a tool. That's what it boils down to. It's a political tool to not get too much backlash if something happens, and it does happen. Like the most recent incident at a protected beach was last year when Nick Slater lost his life at the most heavily netted and drumline square kilometre in the country. Nick Slater died from a great white, and the politicians get to say, these devices aren't perfect, but they're better than nothing. We did our best. He
took a risk. He knew what he was in for.
Yeah. It's to cover them. It's not to cover anyone else. It's to cover them. It's that simple. Yeah. And it really, really frustrates me.
And in Durban, they actually do it really well. There's you may have come across them, the Natal Sharks Board. Mm-hmm. Right, which growing up, at school, you go there for a school outing and so on. And, first you go into this auditorium, there's a whole big film, the history of shark attacks and protecting beaches, this whole educational front. Then you go outside and they dissect a shark. Freshly caught this morning in the nets, because they go and clear the nets every morning along the coastline. And only now I'm realizing, oh shit, if they're doing this every day, how many sharks are they catching to be able to do a dissection twice or three times a day? And then you can still go into the gift shop and buy a shark tooth as a souvenir, and I did. Because you just so, oh wow, okay, they caught it, what a shame, but it's there, we're learning, and I've got a souvenir. How cool is that? Now I'm thinking, hey, what a farce it is. And this is now the general public supporting this, because we should go to the Natal Sharks Board. It's a tourist destination now to go and take advantage of. And these are great whites. These are some of the protected species.
I was blown away when I found that out, because everything is done, under the cover of darkness here. It's you're not allowed to go near this equipment anymore, so you can't film it because they don't want it seen. They don't call it, a shark culling program. They call it a shark control program. They use pretty terminology. Like here, it is very much done, behind a bit of a veil of secrecy. And they're just so open with it in South Africa. Like, you're right, it's a tourist destination. You can watch a shark dissection. When I went through the research process, when I found that, I was like, well, that's really different. That is very, very different. And I don't think it makes it any better. But yeah, here it is so secretive because
You can pay to go on the boats that go and check the nets.
yeah, that's wild here. It's the total opposite. Like here, you can't, obviously, first of all, and second of all, like when I've been out on the water with Sea Shepherd, and if you follow them, like they will do everything they can to lose you. They will, the next few nets they're meant to check, they will skip them and go flat out trying to, because they've got a bigger boat, bigger engines, and try and lose you. And like they will try and do everything. Whereas you're right, yeah, they're selling tickets in South Africa, so that's quite odd. The program are fundamentally similar. Like again, it's there to catch and kill sharks and in an attempt to keep beaches safer. But I guess I don't know if I'd say tip of the cap, but like at least they're open about it. Here it's just lies and deception and political spin and just yeah, you'll see some of the lengths they go to keep this stuff quiet in the doco. But yeah, they really don't want this stuff seen in Australia.
Yeah, but I mean there is starting to be some pushback, isn't there? Like some local councils are advocating for the removal of the nets. I think Bondi, correct me if I'm wrong, but they might be pushing to get theirs removed. But the government,
yes, six of the 8 councils in New South Wales that have nets in their water held a unanimous motion because DPI, Department of Primary Industries, which is responsible for fisheries, they came to the councils and to the community seeking feedback. They have to do it every 5 years. It's a formal process they have to go through. They came seeking feedback. 6 of the 8 councils passed unanimous motions in New South Wales to say we don't want nets. We want more smart drumlines. We want more drones. We want more of this, and we do not want nets. They just ignore it. They out and out just ignore it. Yeah. So and the community again, just to go into how many people are for this or against this, we went and found multiple. Everything from an informal poll, like on a news Facebook page to say, do you support the killing of sharks for beach safety? Anything from that to formal research that was conducted by a research agency. We went and looked at all of that, and anywhere between 70 and 90% of people say, no, we don't want this. So
that's because you're asking the question, do you want sharks killed, not do you want beaches protected? It's how you present it as well. And if you're going to mask the truth, then I'm going to give you an answer based on that. You're misleading me. But if you're going to ask a straight up question, no, of course not.
Exactly. And the government don't. Like if the government held that poll, they would mask it. They would say, do you support us taking measures to keep beaches safer, or whatever, however the hell they'd say it. And people would probably say quite a lot of yes. Whereas when news news just asked the straight question of, do you support the killing of sharks for beach safety? And it was various news stations had done this at various times. And it's an overwhelming no. It's an overwhelming no. So, and I'm not sure everyone connects that. I'm not sure that everyone that voted yes, I oppose this, or no, I don't support this, whichever way around it was. I'm not sure everyone connected that that's what the programs that are at their local beach actually are. I'm not sure people connected the dots there. But yeah, again, hopefully this film helps them connect the dots and realize that if I'm not okay with wildlife being killed for my false sense of security at the beach, I'm not okay with the current program.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why the film is so important, because that educational factor is going to be crucial. Because I remember a couple of years ago when the debate was really heating up in Queensland, and there was lots of interviews on TV, like it was in the news like every night for a period of about a week. And they interviewed a lot of people from the tourism sector, and some people were pretty straight up. They were like, we know that this doesn't work, but it's a feeling of security, and then that's going to help people come here. But
this is the thing that blows me away. Imagine the positive messaging of going, bringing in drones, bringing in barriers, like actual eco barriers that do keep sharks away from people, having rebates on personal deterrence for people who might, surf in remote locations or dive in remote locations. Imagine doing some of these really progressive things, which are some of the solutions we show at the end of the film. Imagine the more positive tourism messaging you could put around that. Imagine being able to say, we are the world leaders in shark mitigation. We have the world's biggest, best most technically advanced shark bite mitigation program. Like, that's a better message. So while I get that that's a desire, giving people the illusion of safety, why not offer real safety, and why not make noise about it and put yourself up on a pedestal as a world leader? Like, why play defense on this? I don't get it.
But you talk about being world leader, yet there's only 3 countries that have this system, I'm going to now call it, in place: South Africa, Australia, and Reunion, right, which is off the
Yeah.
coast of South Africa. Now, so clearly other countries, they have a system. Now, the film talks about Hawaii. They had it and realized, no, actually, this is not working. This is pointless. It's causing more harm. They took it out. But why is it South Africa and Australia? And yet these 2 countries also seem to be, in my mind, from what I've seen and read over the years, over the decades now, I'm getting that old, in research of shark deterrence. Surfers can wear these little gadgets and it scares shark. So it kind of seems incongruent. The 2 main countries doing this program, but at the same time, we're also looking at other solutions but what about all these other countries with massive coastlines and have sharks, and there's no issue?
Yeah, we've created the issue ourselves, and yeah. So look, first of all, just to clarify, when I say world leaders, I mean what if we went to a more modern program, we could put ourselves out as world leaders. The current program is definitely not, most definitely not. But yeah, I don't think we've done ourselves any favors. If anything, we've made it worse. By having these programs and sticking with them and defending them so aggressively, I think we've made things worse. You make it more part of the public psyche, first of all, by constantly talking about it and reinforcing it and blah, blah, blah. And B, you actually, you can teach animals that there's food in this area. The amount of images we have through a freedom of information request, not our image. We didn't go and take them. These are straight from the government's vaults, so to speak. The amount of images we have of small, harmless animals that have been caught on a hook or caught in a net that are then bitten in half, and you go by the jaw size, it's a very large animal that's come in. So yeah, you're quite right. Not only have we made more part of the public psyche and more of a concern around it than it should be, obviously by these other countries that do nothing or do something else. But we're also potentially, habituating animals to come in and feed close to shore, because there's always an easy meal in the net. Like, yeah, I think it's a combination of the 2. But yeah, we certainly, one thing we can say for absolute certain is it definitely hasn't helped. Yeah. Has it made it worse? Yeah, potentially. And by the images I've seen of animals bitten in half, and I'm talking like a tiger shark that's been bitten by a great white, like, it's not just little fish getting bitten by slightly bigger fish. Like, we're talking very, very big fish being bitten by even bigger fish, because you're luring them in. There's an easy meal. They know there's an easy meal, and that's very dangerous when there's a surf break 100 meters away.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's not only are we not doing anything good, but yeah, you're quite right. We're potentially making things worse, based on the stats.
Yeah, and I just want to point out to the listeners, do check out the website, because there are a lot of these images that Andre's been referring to. So go and have a look, because it'll really help drive that message home. So obviously, moving away from the nets and the drum lines, it's essential. But you mentioned some of the alternatives there. For people that don't know about these newer technologies, can we feel safe with them? Do they actually work? Or should we just be, adjusting, changing our mindsets and thinking, well, this is their home, this is their turf, like, we've got to take that risk? Like,
the mindset is very much a personal choice. Like, for me, I enter the ocean, I realize it's a risk. I'm happy with nothing there. I understand that other parts of society might not feel that way, but I think the important thing we need to acknowledge here is that the person who's going to make this decision, which is a politician, is not going to feel that way. They're never going to go from, we've killed sharks for all these years, we've told people we keep them safe, to, oh, you're all, enter the water at your own risk now. The politician making that decision is never going to do that. They have to have replacements to cover their backsides. So first of all, yeah, I mean, like I said, my position is one. I think the realistic position is another, which is modernize the program is the terminology we're using. We're not saying scrap the program. We're saying modernize the program. Use modern non-lethal technologies that are actually effective. So what some of those are is shark spotting drones are very, very effective at not only spotting sharks, but also being able to tell from the silhouette whether it is a dangerous shark or a large shark or not, so that you don't continuously clear the beach for something harmless like a grey nurse shark or a small hammerhead or something like that. You're only clearing the beach and getting people out of the water if you're concerned about an animal that could be a potential risk. So those are fantastically effective. The bonus they have, and this to me, there's not enough of a point made of this. The bonus they have is they can also spot drowning victims and also give comfort to them and help them calm down. So if you have a shark spotting drone, you happen to see someone who's been pulled out in a rip, you go hover near that person, they're more comfortable that they've been seen, they'll relax a bit, it buys you a few more minutes to get out there and help them. Hopefully they don't drown. Even the larger drones can even drop a personal flotation device to that person. That shark spotting drone will save more victims from drowning than it will from sharks, because the shark risk is almost non-existent, and drowning is a very, very real risk. Nearly 300 people a year drown, and a shark bite on a good year you have 0 or 1, on a bad year you have 5 or 6. So statistically that value add of a shark spotting drone is worth it alone for that. The other technologies you have is barriers, which is what people think a net is. So it actually separates sharks from people. It will actually keep sharks away from the surf break or from the swimming location, and in a way that does not entangle and kill. These barriers, they're hard. They're not a fishing net. They're a hard plastic device, basically, that will separate sharks from humans in a non-lethal way. You've also got those personal deterrents that can be worn, which is good for surfers, good for divers. And yeah, you wear it around your ankle or on the bottom of your surfboard. It emits an electric field, which sharks hate. And should they come around seeing what's what and mistaking you for a prey item, they quickly get the message that, oh, this is not something that I want to be. I want to be around or trying to have a bite of. So they're kind of the big three, as well as that smart drum lines I should mention. I don't like to talk about them too much because, again, they're not a barrier. They're not actually keeping sharks away from people. But the good thing about them is, and they are baited as well, which I don't particularly see as a positive when you're right behind a surf break. But to their credit, they are non-lethal. Contractors get there within a couple of hours and they tag and release the shark. So in terms of wildlife impact, they're better. In terms of a bather protection or a surfer protection device, they're still, to use your analogy, they're still just a few baited traps around the edge of a paddock.
Yeah. Now you mentioned Sea Shepherd. Now in this documentary, you've collaborated with a few organisations: Sea Shepherd, Australian Marine Conservation Society, Humane Society International. Now, we've past conversations we've had with other filmmakers of documentaries, poaching documentaries, and so on. They've always spoken about the importance of impartiality. To really deliver a story that you can't blame for bias. But in this particular case, there is no really two sides of the story. There is no justification for simply killing. So tell us a little bit about, who you chose to collaborate with and why, and why it makes it a bit more effective in getting that message out.
Look, we wanted to hear from and interview and collaborate with anyone who had a story to tell, basically. And that included the governments that run these programs. They declined. So you can only ask for an interview so many times before you go, okay, we'll tell this story as best we can without them, still representing the facts, but without a spokesperson on camera trotting out whatever line they would like to trot out. So balance was still important to us, but also didn't shy away from working closely with organizations or people who work in this space and have the knowledge, because they have the knowledge. What they have to say is important, regardless of whether you're a politician who thinks they're a bunch of hippies and and should just shut up, or like irrespective of that, what they have to say is usually backed by science and facts and is valid. And to have them on camera and saying that, is important. It's a valid part of the story. I think sometimes, impartiality is important, but I think sometimes filmmakers can go too far with it in terms of like intentionally cutting people out for the appearance of balance. So yeah, I think we were more than happy to include anyone that had something valid or important to say on this topic, and a lot of those were organisations that work in this space. And the amount of knowledge and data and imagery that they had, the only way to tell the story properly was to collaborate with them. So my only real regret is that no one from the government wanted to talk to us, because it would have been nice to have them on camera and hear their side. Although, to go full circle to your question, what is their side? There is no real second side to this. Like the facts are the facts, and the images of what happens out there are the images of what happens out there. Like there's not much they can say other than their spin on it. But that spin is not based in fact. That spin is not based in reality, and I think that's why they don't want to be on camera.
And they could have still given you that spin, but the fact that they chose to decline in itself pretty much says it. Says what they, yeah.
And it's because they know it's spin and it's hollow. And the moment I start grilling them, they're going to be in a very, very uncomfortable situation in terms of not knowing what to say, or having to outright lie, or, having to admit things that they don't want to admit. So I get why they declined. Like, you don't want to have a conversation about something that is ineffective and wrong, with someone who's very, very, very prepared and armed with the facts and armed with the stats and armed with the science. That's not a conversation you want to have. So I get it.
And you got a reaction out of them, didn't you? They changed a law, or they introduced, the whole coming too close to a drum line or whatever. I mean, that was introduced during the course of your filming, as if in effect as almost in response to what you were doing.
Yeah, they don't want it seen.
Yeah.
So when they got whiff that a documentary is being made about this, all of a sudden a rule popped up that, you can't go within 20 meters, which essentially means you can't film. You can't film more than, I don't know, 5-10 meters underwater before it's useless. So they particularly chose a distance that they knew stopped underwater footage being filmed, and it by coincidence seemed to happen when we were filming. And I won't spoil this part, because this part will make your blood boil, but the reasoning, this actually really, really winds me up. The reasoning they gave for that 20-meter exclusion zone, because they didn't want to say the real reason, which is, we don't want people filming this. It's pretty bad. Health and safety, of course. No, the real reason as to why they, that's the real reason. The excuse they gave as to why they put this law into place will make your blood boil. It is appalling, disgusting.
I won't. Yeah, I've seen it. So
So they're quick to dive into action to, shut your good work down, but when it comes to actually changing the laws here, they'll drag their feet. You've got a list on your website of 5 things that we can all do in 5 minutes to help the slaughter of sharks, and one of them is to do with a petition to the government. Can you run us through those 5 actions and how we can get involved?
Yeah, absolutely. So one is a petition. It's on change.org. I think right now it's, what are we at? Do you happen to have it open? I think we're about 75,000, 80,000 signatures. So petition on change.org is going pretty well. That calls on the Queensland state government to stop what they're doing, the New South Wales government to stop what they're doing or modernise it, and also the federal government to close the loophole in the Environmental Act that allows these programs to run. So there's that petition. There's also a letter writing campaign where it's super easy. There's a pre-scripted template for you, and you can basically email your local minister if you're in Australia, and if you're not in Australia, you can email the ministers responsible for these programs with a pre-templated email to say, I don't support what you're doing, I want you to change it. There's also a place to sign up for protests and paddle outs. So the 2014 trial of a shark cull in Western Australia it was ended because of mass public outcry. They had protests with 5, 6, 7,000 people on the beach against these programs. That was in 2014. Keep in mind, these programs in Queensland and New South Wales have been running since 1937 and 1962. But because it was new and it was novel in WA, there was people on the streets and the beaches, more accurately. So again, there's a place to sign up for protests and paddle outs, because that's the next phase of this. Is first of all, it's educate via the film. Second of all, it's agitate via having thousands of people on a beach, hopefully. Then the other two I need to check up, actually. I think, do you happen to have it open? One of them is leave us a review on IMDb to make sure that it does really well in terms of, gets suggested to a lot of people on streaming platforms. And do you happen to have the other one open? I should know this, shouldn't I?
I'm just about to open it. So we've got sign the petition, sign the letter, become a shark champion with us. So that's the one you might want to talk about. So the Shark Champions is AMCS, Australian Marine Conservation Society, and HSI, Humane Society International. That's their own campaign against this. And then there's also Sea Shepherd's campaign against this as well. So not only support our campaign against it, but also the other organisations working in this space. And then the IMDb one is just, if you've got some extra time and you'd like to take some extra actions, you can rate us on IMDb, which means we'll get suggested more on streaming platforms. Impact survey. So how did your opinion change from watching the film? That'll become a really important lobbying tool over time to say, hey, this many people said they're less likely to come as a tourist now, that kind of stuff. There's a bunch of actions there, and all of them are important. But if someone's time poor and they can only do the petition, even that is appreciated. Yeah. And you've got some upcoming screenings of the film in Hervey Bay and in Darwin. But for everyone else, how can we watch the film?
Yeah, so this is actually good timing for this interview, because it's literally just, the news has just been released yesterday or the day before. So it is coming to Stan exclusively on October 12th. So yeah, we knew we needed this on a large platform with a large audience in order to educate the amount of people we needed to educate to actually make change here. Early in the piece, there was discussions of do we just put it on YouTube and that's free for everyone and easy to access and blah, blah, blah. But it was a conscious decision to go, no, we need a big streamer, a big streaming service with resources to market it and push it and make sure it gets seen. So the Stan deal pretty much is perfect. Ticks all those boxes.
But if you want to watch it now, like me, you can go onto the website and you can watch it. Was it directly on the website? It took me to another platform, can't recall, but you pay for a download and you have access to it. So you can certainly watch it anywhere in the world. You can have access to that. So you've spoken about the main purpose of this documentary was education. To educate as many people as possible, to bring awareness to what is happening and what needs to change. Where do you see this going next? I mean, Stan is a big deal now because that's a big distribution sort of opportunity. What next do you want to do with that, with this whole education platform?
Look, it's really about building a movement from here. So it stops being about the film and it starts being about a movement. And we're talking to all the other organisations that are involved in the film, also other organisations that weren't involved in the film but are involved in this space. And at the moment we're pretty much forming a coalition, I guess you could say, informally. So we're all going to be singing from the same hymn book, acting towards the same things, and getting all our supporters. And hopefully the film can create a whole bunch of new supporters, but all getting our supporters to do the same things at the same time. And that might be coming down to a protest on a beach. That might be calling your local MP to leave a voice message or talk to them about wanting these programs change. It might be signing a petition. Basically, the concept from here is to start a movement via everyone who's anyone in this space singing from the same hymn book and getting all of their supporters to pull in the same direction, because that is going to be what's needed. The odd angry email or message to a politician is not going to, on its own, change a program that's been around since 1937 or 1962, but tens of thousands of them certainly should.
And we've got elections coming up too, so it's time to capitalise on that.
Absolutely. And this sits really well with our newly launched campaign, Athletes for Nature, which is getting out there and actually appreciating the importance of protecting what's out there. Andre, this has been, just to clarify to our listeners the perceived naivety I had growing up surfing and spending a lot of the time in the surf. The one thing that I did learn very early on, and I think because we were taught that sharks are protected species. And actually, the funny story I tell a lot of people is when I first came to New Zealand, I was shocked when you go up north to the northern part of the North Island, and there's a well-known beach, a well-known sort of fish and chip shop, and you have to order your fish and chips. And I was shocked to discover that it was shark. It was lemonfish, which is a species of a shark. And I was like, but I come from South Africa. Sharks are protected. You can't eat shark. And here you are eating sharks. And yes, lemonfish is a much smaller fish. But I've always learned to appreciate them. My very first encounter with a shark, I had one swim between my legs as I was putting my leash on, and it was a sand shark. And it's like, we know they're harmless, So I think, I've been fortunate that at least despite the whole brainwashing of, we're protecting the beaches and these sharks are just unfortunate that they got caught in the nets. Like, no, actually, that was on purpose. At least I'm fortunate that I've learned up to appreciate them. And that's why watching this documentary has been, firstly, fantastic footage, fantastic, cinematography, really well done. So thank you for putting this together. But one more question I do want to ask is, and watching some of the footage that you had in the documentary, is how hard is it not to get involved? You had some shots of, you're swimming up alongside a whale that has been tangled up. How hard is it to not just whip out a knife and just start cutting that net and set that whale free? I mean, it's devastating, isn't it?
Yeah, look, so some of that footage, that was not all us because of that law got brought into place. We actually got
That's right.
little of our own footage, because they made it illegal while we were filming. So a lot of that's not actually ours. Some is, but a lot of it's not. It's actually donated by various contributors who have been doing good work in this space for quite some time. And I guess how can I say it? The fines for doing something are so substantial. Like, we're talking over $60,000 if you cut an animal free. So that there's a very, very large deterrent to do it. They're very interested in protecting their own interests here, as you can tell. So the fines are substantial. How do I put this? So yeah, look, there are times where if someone's being watched, it's like you got to do the right thing and you got to leave it. There's other times where maybe the camera stops rolling and something else happens that wasn't shown in the film, might just be implied. But yeah, I can only imagine, especially like this hasn't happened to us, but some of the stories we've been told from the contributors, like literally having to leave an animal to die because the fisheries contractor has said, no, we won't come out for that. Like a ray or something like that. They'll generally come for a dolphin or a whale. But like a ray, they might be like, no, we're not going to bother coming out for that. We'll just get it out next net check, which might be a day or two away. And knowing that you're being watched, be it from a high rise or another boat, and those people having to leave that animal, I can only imagine how difficult that is. But yeah, luckily at other times there's there's usually something sneaky done that doesn't necessarily need to be documented on camera.
Now, look, on that note, we want to thank you so much for your time. We know you're incredibly busy trying to get this documentary out. But firstly, thank you so much for getting such an important message out. We've done some land-based conservation, episodes, and we've said we need to do one for the ocean. So this is really timely to bring awareness to a particular part of the planet that we just don't see and appreciate as much as we do on land. So thank you so much for sharing some real important insight and a lot of actions we can take, which is positive. And that's how we want to end, on a positive note. And there's plenty to do. So we'll have all the notes and the links and everything in our show notes as always. So thank you so much, Andre, for your time and your contribution to making a change in this planet we live on.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Best thing you can do is go out there and get under the water. But failing that, yeah, get on a couch and have a watch and And yeah, take the actions, follow the organisations that are involved, learn more about what's going on in the ocean, not just this issue, but others, because it needs standing up for. So thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Lentil Intervention podcast. Make sure you subscribe and share this podcast with your friends, and visit the website for more details.